Welcome to Sunday Mornings with Twitchy Women. Today's topic is DBS, Deep Brain Stimulation. Okay, so I'm sure most of you know what DBS is, but this is a real quick down and dirty. This is from the Parkinson's Foundation's website. Deep brain stimulation surgery was first approved in 1997 to treat Parkinson's disease tremor. So it's been around for 23 years. Right now, the procedure is used only for patients whose symptoms cannot be adequately controlled with medications, and electrodes inserted into a targeted area of the brain, as you can see in the photo there. And second procedure is performed to implant an IPG, or impulse generator battery, which is like a pacemaker. And those who undergo DBS surgery are given a controller to turn the device on or off, and they can manage the amount of stimulation. Well, I will let them tell you about it because they know a whole lot more than I do because I haven't had it. So let's go to the next slide. So our speakers today, the first speaker, I'm going to introduce everybody at once, and then I'm going to let them just tell their stories. So our first speaker is Candace, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's in the spring of 2012 at age 59. She retired at 65 and started her new chapter of life with adding more exercise to her medical plan along with Cinemet. Through a Parkinson's dance class, water aerobics, a boxing circuit class, yoga, and walking their lab, Layla. We had a dog named Layla. She became acquainted with a new group of friends living with Parkinson's in Springfield, Illinois. She convenes weekly with a group of Springfield area people with Parkinson's, now via Zoom. Her DBS surgery was in March of 2020, and she had a career in government relations that spanned advocacy for adoption and foster care reform, public education funding, and higher education, starting in Washington, D.C., then Trenton, New Jersey, and then finally Springfield, Illinois. Candace and her husband remain pensioners in Springfield while their children live in New York and Chicago. And meeting Twitchy women from around the globe has been an added plus to living with Parkinson's. Thank you, Candace. Darlene is the baby of this group. Darlene will be turning 47 in a couple of weeks. She was diagnosed in October of 2016, and she had her surgery on November 30th. So she's just had her surgery for both sides, bilateral deep brain stimulation. And 4 days later, her stimulator was placed in the left chest wall, and her first programming was December 29th. So she's going to tell us all about this. Victoria Miller is from Spirit Lake, Iowa. She was diagnosed as young onset patient at age 48 over 18 years ago. In 2011, she moved to the Des Moines area and was asked to be on the Iowa APDA Board of Directors, which she still volunteers on, mainly in the areas of support groups and mentoring new onsets and DBS patients. She's married to her care partner, Bob, she's been married to for 47 years. They have 2 children, one of whom is on this morning, and 2 grandchildren. She worked as a hospital medical records director, then a college instructor, preschool and kindergarten teacher, and finished her career as a teacher of young, talented, and gifted children. And Sydney, I don't know what I did with yours. I'm sorry, it's here somewhere.
I just sent it to an email. I just did it.
I know you just sent it to me. Hold on, I'll get it. I thought I had copied it into this. Okay, Sydney was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2010 at the age of 47. She became involved in the Parkinson's community through cycling after participating in a tandem bike exercise study with Dr. Jay Alberts, who many of you saw several months ago. She went on to ride Ragbri in Iowa with the Pedaling for Parkinson's team and ride the Rockies in Colorado with the Davis Finney Foundation team. Sydney continues to cycle, often riding tandem with her husband, Pat, and has since added yoga, strength training, and boxing to her exercise regimen. Exercise helps her stay healthy and manage her Parkinson's symptoms. Sydney had DBS surgery in December of 2018, which has helped her continue to manage symptoms and to live well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Candace. Each of our speakers is going to speak for about 10 minutes. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. We will come to them after everybody's through speaking. We will get to the questions. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, let us know where you're from and how you found us. Put that in the chat too. So Candace, it's your turn.
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. This morning, I kind of feel like I'm telling my labor story. We all have, those of us who have had children and have had labor, experience telling that story to people whether they want to hear it.
Hold on 1 second. Candace, we're going to mute everybody. Yeah, I think we will mute everybody. That's probably the best thing to do here. And then unmute you so you can speak. Okay? Okay. You should still be on.
I am.
Wait. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So this is my labor story for Parkinson's. I mean, those of us who have told our labor stories, sometimes people wanted to hear them, sometimes they didn't. All of them are different, and certainly all of these stories are going to be different too. So bear with me in that regard.
Okay. Eli, next slide, please. Go ahead.
My first thought for you all is to realize that the decision to consider DBS is yours to make. And it will be much more, I think, successful if you're the one who is leading the show over caregivers, maybe even over medical people, because it is such an interesting and scary sounding surgery that you need to go into it with the fact that you want to learn about it. That's my view. It's also something that I think occurs while you were waiting for a cure, because this certainly doesn't cure Parkinson's, but it does promise to improve your quality of life. And I think overall it does. I mean, there's certainly going to be stories where it hasn't, but I can say that it has improved my quality of life. And I also think another thing to think about is that sooner rather than later for DBS decision-making is not a bad thing. They've been moving up the age, I think, because they realize it does help with quality of life, and it doesn't, it doesn't, I mean, it's not like sentiment in the sense of creating new problems. So another thought, do your research. I found the Davis Finney webinars really helpful. The ones that were moderated by Sonia Mather were wonderful. Parkinson's Foundation has it's an old, but it's a very easy to read. It's called A Special Guide for Parents and Families with DBS. Oken and Thielman, Michael Oken, that we hear about, are the authors. I read that. And then I also appreciated Carol Clapney's book, because she had a chapter or more about her DBS, and it had pictures, which I appreciated, and you're going to see some pictures today. And then Brainstorms has a good chapter about DBS too. So those are just some quick examples of research that helped me. I went to a couple presentations, one sponsored by doctors in the St. Louis area, and that was very helpful. And there actually was one in Springfield, Illinois, because we have one surgeon who does DBS. I had my DBS done in St. Louis at Washington University. Dr. Joshua Dowling was my surgeon. And speaking of surgeon, I think that's the next important thing, is you really need to be confident about your team that's going to do the DBS. If you go into it feeling that you've got highly qualified people who have done a lot of these surgeries, I think you're going to find it much more comfortable, not only because of them, but also because of the procedures that exist. A friend of mine had hip surgery that I was her kind of care partner in the hospital. And I was just amazed at the procedure, the protocol, and how simple it all went. And that was my experience with DBS as well. They knew what they were doing, and they did it efficiently and effectively. And I really appreciated that opportunity to be served that way. Of course, gather support from your own care team, your family and friends. The people who prayed for me while I was on the gurney, I know I felt their strength, but certainly you want their support with the decision that you made. I also was fortunate to have a Springfield friend who'd had it a month before me, and everything went well. So he was also a very good example. So I was blessed to have him right here in town to talk to before I went into the surgery. But the main thing I wanted to say is you got this, girl. Yes, it is brain surgery. Yes, you probably will be awake. I was for the procedure, but it isn't experimental. It isn't considered experimental anymore. And the risks are pretty good. The percentage rates are pretty good. You're going to hear about a few blips, but they really are good. And when I sat down in the gurney and everybody was gathered around me, I said, okay, I'm laying here. Who's going to microblade my eyebrows while we're doing this? And honestly, if you think about it, I mean, I haven't had my eyebrows microbladed, but I hear you have to sit, you know, flat and quiet for 40, 45 minutes. Well, hey, just add 3 more hours to that or 4 more hours, and that's what happened. I'm not trying to minimize it. It is a very interesting, and when you're awake, interesting survey, but it's not quite as scary as it feels when you first start thinking about it. I think a couple good descriptions of the day of surgery is it is sort of like getting on that line for a roller coaster ride. You realize you're in the line, you're not going to get out, and you listen to these people screaming ahead of you and you look at it, but hey, you got to go through with it anyway. And when you come out the other side, you realize I did it. And it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it would be. Or another analogy may be the dentist chair. I really did feel like when they drilled the holes in my brain that I was at the dentist. And it didn't hurt because they had provided Novocaine air, you know, to the head in that regard. And the inside of the brain doesn't hurt at all. There's not pain receptors inside the brain. So basically just the fact that you're flat on your back, but surrounded, in my case, by wonderful people, beautiful nurses with beautiful eyes who kept making sure I was okay. It really was okay. And you know, I want to make sure that I don't sugarcoat it. It is major surgery and amazing surgery, but you got it, girl. You can do it. If you think it will solve your dyskinesia, or taking as many cinnamon as you are taking on your on-off periods, find out if it'll help you. I really do recommend that. After it's over, pamper yourself. You really had courage to do this, and it's a wonderful testament to your strength, but it's also something we should be grateful for the first world medical system, that we do have it available to us. So much of the world, of course, wouldn't even be thinking about this or talking about this now. They just want to get carbidopa-levodopa, for heaven's sakes. So we certainly are blessed in that regard. I've had programming done 6 times. My surgery was right before the COVID shutdown, so then that made my first programming a little late. But I've had 6 so far. I'm scheduled for another one. They're going slow with it. I don't have access to taking, I mean, I have my controller, but at St. Louis, their view is, in Washington U, is that a part of the quality of life, I don't really feel it's paternalistic. I didn't feel like it, is that they're in charge of futzing with it, not you. So we'll see if that changes later, but I do take a less cinnamon. My off-on periods are different. I mean, I was down to like 3 hours between my doses. I take less. I take it less often. And I did lose most of my, you know, dyskinesia. which is what started me on thinking about getting it done. So I just, there is one negative for me at one level, and that is that I did gain the DBS 15. I could add the COVID 15 maybe, but I had really lost a lot of weight and I knew it was not, good, but it was kind of fun being the same weight as I was in high school. But hey, in the scheme of the world, right? Being married 47 years and 2 babies, and it's not the worst thing. And when I can get back into the water for water aerobics, I'm doing all the other exercises on Zoom, but I miss the water. So to close, I just hope that if you consider it, you have it done, I hope your quality of life has improved. It certainly has improved mine. And the picture here is me right after the surgery. I had both done at the same time. So I had one surgery 1 week with the implants put in, or the leads put in when I was awake. And then a week later, I had a surgery where they put me under and they put the 2 battery packs in. But this was after the implant surgery where I was awake. And honestly, the only pain I had was a headache. And so my daughter took this picture of me holding a latte, and the latte did the trick. I really felt fine afterwards. And the next day went home and had a pretty easy recovery. But I pampered myself, and I was pampered. One final thing about shaving your head, that was really kind of the priority of my questioning. And of course, none of the male doctors ever talk about it. But the doctor who shaved I asked if I should shave it ahead of time. And the doctor said, please don't. We don't want you to have, get infection. So the doctor who shaved me it was part of the process in the room for the surgery. I just teased her about what she was doing and how well she was doing. But again, it really was the least of my worries. And my sweet son shaved his head. He was looking like Solomon, his hair down to here. And so in solidarity, he got his shaved too. And his is a little bit longer than mine is at this point. So anyway, hair is important and the doctors really don't care. And Darlene will have another story about how she just had a little bit shaved, but I had the full shave, and this is 9 months later. So it's okay. So again, thank you for this opportunity to share my story. And again, it's my story, but I hope I have encouraged people to look into it, because you have to decide and you can do it. You got it, girl. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Candace. Okay, Darlene, unmute yourself and you are next.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and just explain a little bit about this picture. This is me about 10 hours every day before DBS. My medications only worked for about an hour and a half, maybe the most. And for the rest of the 2.5 hours, I sat on the floor on my knees, bent over, and mainly in pain. And I would just sit there. Sorry. And the reason why I'm showing this picture is because I want women to know that some maybe be going through this as well. You're in pain and nobody can help you. Like my husband would be like, can I help you? Can I give you anything? Can I give you any pain medicine? Can I, can I, Mom, what can I do for you, Mom? Can I sit with you? Can I pray with you? And that was the best thing that they could have done. But it's just, you really feel alone. And this is why I did it. This is why I did DBS. I have a journey that it seemed like Parkinson's, when I had Parkinson in 2016, when I was first diagnosed, I was kind of like, what's the big deal? what's the big deal? Like, I'm taking one pill and I feel fine. And then I went to this new neurologist, a movement disorder. And just so you know, each three of my doctors had told me that I was a good candidate for deep brain stimulation. But I was like, no, that's not going to be me. I'm going to be like Jimmy Choi. I'm going to be exercising like crazy, and I'm going to be in marathons and stuff. And um, so anyhow, my journey didn't end up like that. And so like probably like late 2019, I started to have neuropathy. I started to feel more tired. Um, my movement disorder was decreasing my medication. She did not want me to be on pramipexole. She said that I was showing some compulsivity. And that's not to say that everyone who's on these dopamine agonists have that problem at all. But just saying that I did. And it was very mild, I think. And so anyhow, when she started to change me down, I think that's what kind of helped or induced my decline. And then because like on the day that I stopped one of my meds, my pramipexole, it was my first panic attack I've ever had in my entire life. And I was on dopamine agonist for 3 years at a really high dose. So I feel that maybe that kind of contributed to the panic attacks. I would drive home from wherever I was. This is like my Parkinson's 2020. Everybody had their COVID 2020. I had my bad year of Parkinson's 2020. And I would be coming home in January, and I'd be like, I'd see my house, my stomach would drop. I would look like at my bed. I would get so scared I couldn't sleep in my bed. I sleep in the sofa. I slept with a nightlight. I had my Bible app. I listened to it throughout to help me fall asleep. It was just a really scary time, I guess. It's real scary because that has never happened to me. I'm probably one of like on the floor. My career as a nurse, and on the floor, I am very how can I say? People come to me for the problem patients. People come to me for advice. People come to me for strength. People come to me for, hey, help me with this patient, and I'll go and I'll do it. So Parkinson's did change my life in that sense. Let's see, where am I at? I was so afraid and so panicky that I was even afraid to look up at the clouds. I had so much anxiety that I felt that was part of the medications that my doctor was giving me. She was a very smart doctor. However, she didn't listen to my problems. And I felt that she taught more from her ego rather than her heart. And I mean, she just prescribed from her ego more than from her heart, meaning that she wanted me to look a certain way and I wasn't. She wasn't rolling with my punches. She wasn't rolling with me. And because of all that, she told me to take like 3 medications at one time. And I even told her, this isn't good practice. This is like, as a nurse, I know that you start a medication one at a time so that you can see if there's any mal effects. Okay, so with that, I still did it. I did what she said because I wanted people to know. I wanted my family to know that I was trying, and I wanted her to know that I was trying. Well, after all that, feeling like I was bullied, I left her and I went to Cedars-Sinai. Actually, before that, I went to my my first neurologist, the first neurologist I ever had, and he coached me from the sidelines. He was like a coach, like just like if I was playing soccer. He was just like, okay, Dirty, he called me every day. Let's try this one. Okay, how'd you do? How'd you do overnight? Okay, let's try Cinnamon 3 times a day. Let's try this. Let's try that. All these different regimens. He was a really good doctor. And then he said, you know what? The last thing we haven't tried is DBS. And he had told me about it again. But then again, and when he was my first doctor first. So I was offended. Like when he told me the first time, the second time I was like, okay, let's hear about this DBS. So, excuse me. I was referred to Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, and my new doctor was very straightforward and said, excuse me, something like this. You can teeter-totter on and off your meds, but I can already tell with your pattern, it's not going to get any better. This is in March 2020. By May of 2020, I was seeing Dr. Elliot Hogg at Cedars-Sinai permanently, and he still tried different combinations of drugs with me, which was okay because they were different ones I had never tried. Excuse me just a minute. Can you give me a glass of water, please? Sorry. Let's see. And okay, so with this, because they were different ones I had tried, I was up to his plan. I was like, okay, sure, we'll try them. And then his motto was always, let's try one more pill before we drill. And so by late September, early October, I started the process of screening for deep brain stimulation. I met my surgeon, and 2 weeks later, I was scheduled for November 30th for both sides. Bilateral deep brain stimulation. 4 days later after that, I was scheduled to have my stimulator placed in the left chest wall. My first programming was December 29, which wasn't really what I expected. So I expected to leave completely feeling fine, better than I ever felt before. I even asked my sister-in-law to bring back my Doc Marten heels that I lent her, 4-inch heels, because I thought I'm gonna walk out of the hospital in those babies, because I got rolled into the hospital. So I thought I'm gonna walk out in those. I did walk out, but I didn't walk out in those shoes. The first programming was good, but it left me with more dyskinesia than I ever had, ever. But my doctor did say that I would decrease in time, and that I would decrease in the week. And I should try just to play with my meds and find the right dose from 1 pill to 1.5 of carbidopa levodopa. So I have, and so here I am with you all with some left-sided weakness, some impaired walking, and mainly dyskinesia that is very bothersome at times. And so I do emphasize to people who have dyskinesia, it's very tiring on the body to say the least, because this is the first time I'm ever having it. But please know that I have no more off times like I did before. Like I had to sit on the floor in that first picture that I'm showing you right there, like right there. I would be like that for about 2.5 hours. And then I don't have any bladder urgency, so hooray, like I did before. I sleep very well, but however, I do have a cocktail of things that make me fall asleep and keep me asleep. I have no more physical pain because I had pain throughout my body, had electrical shocks, like burning shocks, like sensations that I never had before in my legs. And in my mind, I feel overall better. I feel more confident. I feel like I could speak more clearly. I just feel stronger in general, and I'm still glad I did the surgery. And that's it.
Eli, next slide, please. There she is after surgery. And do you want to show the video or no?
I sent a video.
Yeah, you sent a video of when they turned it on.
Oh yeah. Okay, you go ahead. You go ahead. I know I did that.
Okay. Okay. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Eli, can you see the
Rabbit,
video or no?
Yeah, you can put the video on.
Yeah.
Okay. So right here, I'm very uncomfortable. Like I said, I thought I was gonna feel great. I thought I was gonna walk out of there like skipping. And I'm moving. I have dyskinesia. And it just feels really like fuzzy feeling on my right side. And my husband's there watching me and he's filming, and I told him to stop because it just didn't feel like it. I was very uncomfortable. And it's just like, that was for me. That was for my first programming. Now, then you hear people say, oh, my programming was great. Why did you feel like that? And you know what? Everyone's going to be different. Everybody's going to be different. And right there, the doctor is, she's adding stimulation to my right side, I believe. So it's just me moving around, being very uncomfortable. just not feeling well in general, even feeling nauseated at times, just not feeling normal. And then what I would like to say though about the surgeon, I did not, like how Cindy says, I remember having the DBS pamphlet in my hand and I could not even look at it in the beginning of the year. I could not even look at it. I couldn't even think about it. I couldn't even whisper the words deep brain stimulation because I was so nervous about it. I just felt like I was just so afraid of it. I was just so under medicated, and plus in the condition I was in, I mean, having these panic attacks, I mean, didn't add to it, but I mean, did add to that, but I'm so glad that I did do it. Right here, I had them cover my head because I didn't want my husband to faint to see the blood, and and I did talk to my surgeon inside the operating room, and all I heard him say was, "Okay, we're gonna drill now," and I said, "What?" And then I fell asleep. And then I woke up, and then we did, remember I did share, and I did tell you, I spoke to him and talked to him about my being non-menopausal and why does that happen? And he was talking to me about the endocrinology of the brain and everything like that. And I remember him speaking about that. He remembers that the next day. So that's me. I was my surgery started at 2. I was probably in the room by 12 midnight. And let me tell you, the prayers that I had, I felt them all. And I did not have any dystonia before my surgery at all. And that's what I was afraid of, because you can't go in there with having any meds. You shouldn't have any medication because you want them to feel the, you want them to try to find the spots that you're having the problems. So all I took was 1 clonazepam. And usually by like 6:30, I'm in pain on the floor. And I lasted till surgery with no pain at all. I was stiff a little bit, but the prayers did help. And thank you very much, Candace, for asking everyone to pray for me. And I guess that's
Thank
it.
you. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, our next speaker is actually Cindy is going before. We don't have any slides from Cindy. Sydney, I'm sorry. So Sydney, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay,
And, okay. All
yeah.
right. Why don't we stop the screen share first while Sydney is speaking. Okay. And we can put you on speaker view. And okay. All right. Sydney, your turn.
All right. So it was really interesting listening to Candace and Darlene and how their experiences were similar in some ways, but very different. And I really did relate to a lot of what Darlene said. And, you know, I've been taking down little notes. And one of the things I wrote down was that I didn't want to be a Debbie Downer. Because my experience now, just to back up a little bit, I was diagnosed in 2010. I was symptomatic since about 2006. I've always had a very good response to levodopa therapy. I have to write down notes because my Parkinson brain gets stuck all the time. Approximately about 2017, I started having dyskinesia. Now, when we think of dyskinesia, we think of kind of the Michael J. Fox movement. That's not what happened to me. And when I watched your video, I recognized that dyskinesia when you did that with your arm. And then, so with me, it's not so much this kind of peak dose dyskinesia. I have what's called biphasic dyskinesia, and it's primarily in my lower right leg where my toes will go like this, and this is what my leg would look like when I get dyskinesia. My arm is kind of going like this. And anyway, it started very mildly. It was just kind of a little teaser of dyskinesia. By about 2018, my off times were getting quite significantly worse. But if I raised my level of levodopa, I would get more of the dyskinesia. So it was kind of you know, what do I do? So I tried just about every new medication. I tried the Apokyn, which was, it was terrible. I tried Gocovri. I tried all these different things. But I kept having just bad responses. So it came down to all I was taking was levodopa. I was taking it, I think like Darlene said, it only lasts for about an hour and a half, which doesn't give you very much time to do anything really. It takes 45 minutes to kick in, and then you've got an hour and a half, and then it starts to wear off, and then I start getting the dyskinesia. I had to be careful about when I drove, when I did anything, because I had such a short window of time. And that's when I started thinking about DBS. And I kind of like Darlene, my neurologist at the time didn't really acknowledge the type of dyskinesia I had. That was never taken into consideration. And so in about September 2018, I decided I'm just going to go and see about it. You know, I went into an appointment with a neurosurgeon, and I came out with the date for DBS surgery. And I had so many people just saying, "Oh, you got to do it. It's so great." And I felt like it was kind of like the ball started rolling and I didn't know how to stop it. So I guess that would be my first thing to kind of warn, or not necessarily warn, encourage people to do, just like Darlene, I think Darlene really said it very well, is make sure that this is for you. Make sure you're doing it at the right time. Now, I'm still glad I did the surgery. And maybe it was good that happened, because maybe I just would have just played around with it and never got the ball really rolling. I don't know. But I felt like I didn't have the time. By the time the surgery was set up, my brain wasn't there yet. So anyway, and so let's just go back to the surgery day. So, you know, within the 2 months, I did kind of get myself mentally prepared. The surgery day, I literally have never been so afraid in my life. I was so scared. And I remember going down the hall on the gurney. I had that thing on my head that looks like something from the Princess Bride torture chamber. And I just remember just thinking, I just wanted to get up and run. And I think part of that was because I didn't have, I felt like I was kind of pushed into it, and I wasn't quite ready. But I knew I wasn't get off and run. So I had to kind of back up in my mind and just say, you trust your surgeon. He knows what he's doing. And when I did that, I just kind of took a deep breath and relaxed. It was okay. And it was fine. It was just a very scary moment. So I think both Darlene and Candace have said, you know, it is scary and it's nothing to take lightly, but if you trust your team, you're going to be okay. I did trust my neurosurgeon. Anyway, so after surgery, I had my first programming, and Darlene, I'm telling you, I just saw so much of that. I came out after the first day and I was so dyskinetic. I was all over the place, and I just freaked out. I was supposed to go to a Parkinson's event the next day, and they actually programmed me like a week early, just because I was going to go to this Parkinson's event. But I was freaking out because I was so dyskinetic, and because of that, it's a long story. I ended up doing my programming through the NIH in Washington, D.C. It's a long story how that happened, but they did an amazing job of being able to kind of, they were the ones who told me that about the Biphasic Dyskinesia in the first place. So when I woke up, or when I got up that morning and I was so dyskinetic, I actually left a message with the doctor at the NIH, and she said, well, we have a program, and so come in and we'll get your programming done there. So I've been doing that for the last 2 years. Of course, I haven't been in for a year because of COVID. But because of the Biphasic Dyskinesia, I have really low settings on my DBS. I have to manage my symptoms more with medication because, and you can't really tell right now, but I'm starting to go off. I'm starting to get the dyskinesias, which is probably why my brain isn't working real well either. But I have to manage through medication just because my settings are so low. They turn the settings up, then I start getting the dyskinesia. So I guess what I would say to everybody is this is a different experience for everybody. Some people have experiences that are very just straightforward and they're wonderful, and that's great. And I wish everybody has that. Some of us have some more challenges with it. But in the end, I'm still really glad I did it. One of the things, the major thing that it really has helped me with is just the stiffness and rigidity. When I would go off before I had DBS, it was like I had drank cement and it just was in my body and it hardened and I couldn't even move. I don't have that anymore, really, ever. So that alone, and sometimes when I get frustrated and I start saying, well, I still have this and I have to manage through medications, I have to back up and remember that was a huge problem before. I don't have that anymore. I still have problems with dyskinesia. I don't really have a lot of problems with tremor anymore, but with the dyskinesia I do. So I've said this before, that dyskinesia is kind of the bane of my existence. But anyway, I really appreciate what Candace and Darlene said, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Sydney. That was great. Okay, and our last speaker is Victoria Miller, and we need to share the screen again, the slideshow again. And when Victoria is done, we will we'll go to the questions in the chat. So if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. Well, my journey started in 2017, really, about year 15 of my Parkinson's diagnosis. And my movement disorder specialist said I maybe should consider thinking about DBS because she said everybody has kind of a window of time to do it. And then I should think about it. It's not something you just make a decision on right away. So, you know, you have to have no pre-existing conditions and all this time. It was my time to do it. So I thought, yeah, I'll try it. I'm game for anything, I guess. So then I had to go for a day of cognitive testing because you can't have any cognitive problems. There's all these things that might preclude you from that. Pre-op work, meeting with a surgeon and testing of the effectiveness of the carbidopa-levodopa. Because if that doesn't work very good for you, they say DBS won't work for you either. So, and I passed my pre-op testing and then I was scheduled, and my DBS is going to be done in 2 parts, stage 1 and stage 2. Can I have the next slide and show it? It shows my pillbox. I just kind of wanted to show you my pillbox before and after. Here's my pillbox before. That's right. You can see there's Stalevo and Pramipexole and carbidopa-levodopa. There's my pillbox now. So it's improved a whole lot, but I still take my pills. I still have to do that. People, you know, on a website I'm on say, oh, I don't take any pills. Well, that doesn't happen very often. So anyway, okay, a little window of time. And so then I met all the docs and the anesthesiologists that day of, and he was my best friend in the OR because he's the one with the goods, of course, the anesthesiologist. So next slide, I'll show you what I look like with that halo on my head. I think that's there. Yeah, there I am. The halo on my head. That was probably the worst part of the whole thing for me, is having that halo placed. So then they took me into the surgery, and it's just very surreal because I was awake. And the reason I need to be awake was because the surgeon has you do all these little tests, like the finger tapping, you know, those screw in a light bulb, that type thing. And if you don't do all those things, then you don't aren't able. If you aren't awake, then you aren't able to do all those things. That's where I was going with that. So, and he asked me questions the whole time about counting backwards from 5 and where I'm at. And he himself cut my hair. The surgeon cut my hair, because you can tell my halo picture. I have lots of hair there. But so he cut my hair. Okay. There are lots of people in the OR, maybe 12, and they all talked, and I got to choose some music. And I was very relaxed, I would have to say, thanks to the anesthesiologist. And also, when they have holes drilled in your skull, that you don't feel anything. I think Candace said that there are no nerve endings in your brain, so you don't feel anything. However, you do, you hear it, and it's like glass shattering. I'll never forget that sound. It's really weird. But it was also weird during stage 1 to hear applying the math coordinates for the wires and listening for the changes in my brain sounds, so that they know that they're in the right place by the changes in your brain sounds. And to calm myself before, I had memorized some Bible verses. And I didn't know when I was reciting them in my head if it was coming across the screen, the little words, or if it was just the sounds. I think it was just the sounds. But anyway, so the wires are wrapped around at the top. And I don't know, do you have, Sharon, you said you took someone out. I don't know which ones. Do you have the next slide? Let's see what we got there. Oh, no, that's after. Okay, so then the wires are wrapped around and the halo's removed before you go to your room, on to recovery. When your bed is ready, then you go up to your room and stay overnight. And I tell you, I felt great. It's called the honeymoon period. I mean, I thought I could run a marathon then. It's because there are still electrical synapses in your brain at that point, right after stage 1. And in fact, the next morning I called my husband at the hotel and said he shouldn't park. Don't bother with that. Just drive through, because I would be at the sidewalk waiting. So I was ready to go home. And then stage 2 is a week later. They have to let the brain rest a little bit. Brains don't like to be messed with, is what Dr. Greenlee told me. I went to Iowa City, which is quite a ways from, I lived in the Des Moines area, and I went in for stage 2, done under general anesthesia. And that's where they untangle the wires, and then they thread it down to the battery pack in your chest. Here's my battery pack today. But let's see, this picture then is for about 2 weeks later. I went to the ER because I didn't feel well. And you can see that there's all this yellow, gooey, orange stuff that's exuding from my head. Yuck. And that was why I didn't feel well. And I had developed an infection called Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And Dr. Greenlee, my surgeon, said that's so rare because usually that bacteria lives very deep inside a wound and not on top of the wound. So it was really a weird thing. And so he said the whole system needed to come out because it had traveled through from my brain down to my chest, pack, battery pack, and everything. So I was so very sick, very, very sick. And a few weeks later, I had it all taken out. But I want you to know this about, chances are you guys get an infection is not going to happen because it's 3% the infection rate. So if you figure that 3 out of 100 people are going to get an infection, I've already taken care of it for all of you. So have no fear. Have no fear. I've taken care of it. And I was on very strong antibiotics and even had a PICC line, which is a thing that goes from into your arm and up through into your heart. So the IV meds can go straight into your heart. And I was still very mixed up at night. Usually, finally, I was discharged and went home to have a home health nurse and a physical and occupational therapist. And then I had 2 IV medicines that were given to me twice a day. And I don't mean morning and night. I mean every 12 hours. You can't have it closer than that. So anyway, that caused for some scheduling problems. But besides that, about a month or so later, I got C. diff in my colon, which is because from too many antibiotics, it's nasty. So the whole thing was such an ordeal. But I tell you, it wasn't too bad because I did it again. I was bound and determined I was going to do it. This is my chest in the bottom left, no, right corner, that would be for you guys. That's my chest wound. And that is my head wound, one of them. I had both sides done as well. So March 2019, I had repeated stage 1, and then a month later, stage 2. And I didn't have any infection that time. Same procedure, same process. I knew exactly what was going to happen, except for that time, say when I did stage 1, Dr. Greenlee said he couldn't really find a whole lot of good tissue to suture. So he said, I gave you a little facelift also. So he grabbed to my skin up right here. So I got a little facelift for free. So then after that, programming is usually scheduled for about 6 weeks because the brain is to be done swelling is the reason why. You know, your brain needs to rest a little bit after all that activity. Brains don't like to be messed with. So and I didn't have any infection that time, but 2 weeks later, I fell down the steps at our house. And so now I'm the proud owner of a plate and 12 screws. And then I had to go to rehab from the steps and wear a big old boot for months. So then I went home and again had a home health nurse and PT and OT and all that business. But even though I did not lose my ability to walk, I do have a friend who did, and he had to teach himself how to walk again. I haven't heard of that happening before. And like they've been saying before, everything is different. Everybody's different. So I did not lose my ability to walk. That was good. So that is my journey with DBS twice. And I want to tell you a few other things about living with Parkinson's disease. And I've lived with it a long time, as you know. You never give up, never give in. You got to keep going, keep trying, keep trying. Is there another slide?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you put that one up there. Oh, yeah, there. Okay. That's in my head. That is the one behind my ear because in stage 2, they tunnel it down to your ear, down through your ear, behind your ear, and down to your battery pack. Stage 1 is the left, and stage 2 is the right there. Another one. Okay, this is what I've learned with Parkinson's now for nearly 19 years. So you have to do all you can to battle the disease, just like any obstacle in life. You got to have a good attitude. Attitude is key, and optimism is a choice that you have to make. You have to be optimistic. Learn to laugh at yourself. I'm called not the twitchy woman, but I'm called the marathon dancer sometimes because I'm moving all over the place. But knowledge is power. Read everything you can so you know things. And all exercise works like a drug, not just boxing. I also want to tell you to leave a legacy of optimism and hope for those that you love. You don't want them to think of you. I mean, we're all going to die. You don't want them to think of you, oh, woe is me. I'm so bad. I got Parkinson's disease. You know, you got to live a legacy of optimism and hope. And that's what you want to leave to your family. And finally, I want to say, is there one more slide, Sharon?
Yeah, one more slide.
Yeah, one
Next
more.
slide.
Here we go. This is my motto. Fate whispers to the warrior. You can't withstand the storm. You've maybe seen this. I've seen this, but the warrior whispers back, I am the storm, and you be the storm. You can do it, guys. You can do it. So.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We have a few questions in the chat, and let me see. Cindy Stone asked, what is the demarcation line over which you cross that makes you decide to do it? If the speakers can all unmute yourselves. Anybody want to answer that?
Well, I know for me, one of the things I've joked about is that I've told our DBS rep that the reason they tell you not to take your medication before you go into surgery is so that you don't chicken out.
Oh.
I mean, really, I sat, it was our surgery, my surgery got pushed back several hours. I remember sitting in there watching, it was George Bush Sr.'s funeral, and I watched the whole thing, and then I was in there for about pre-op for about 4 hours, and I'm like, I was so uncomfortable. So I guess it's just the point where and like I said, I felt kind of rushed into it.
Yeah.
I think that the line is going to be different for different people.
Yeah.
You should.
The demarcation is just when your doctor says, okay, these aren't working as well as they should be right now, and you need to think about it. Because you don't want to take 1 million pills every day. So
For me, it was when I was listening to the webinar, honestly, and the theme about if your pills work now, but your off time is more, and there's things that are just not working as well after the pill. And I just realized I would like to consider this. I would like quality, the theme was quality of life, not cure, but quality of life. And so that's why I went into it. And I'm the one who initiated it. And, my local neurologist said, sure. And he referred me to somebody in St. Louis, and I went from there. So again, it's different for everybody, but and you do need to think about why you want to do it so that you don't get disappointed, totally.
Mm-hmm.
The programming is not, the honeymoon. I had a couple honeymoon periods too, very brief, but I had them, and they were wonderful. But the programming isn't a honeymoon. It does take some adjustment. I've had dyskinesia through the programming as well. So you just have to know yourself.
Okay. Most of the comments are thank you for sharing your stories, and I want to thank all of you too. I have a couple more questions, and maybe we can just give a couple of quick answers because it's 11 o'clock. Is DBS most common for early onset?
I
Yes,
don't
no.
know if it was, but I don't know.
Well,
know.
I mean, from what my doctor told me, he said that they were now looking towards, and I think it was just like, like sometimes they say, oh, well, this drug is good at this time, this drug is good at this time. It was just the thought of the year or the years that have been coming that it's like, why take the Cinnamon or your other medications and have the side effects now? Why should you go through all that, all the problems, all the side effects, all this and all that? Possibly because most people do. Well, I shouldn't say most. That's just what I've heard. And if you can do the DBS and you're ready for doing the DBS, then go ahead and do it. For me, I was young, and from what I understand, young onset, I don't know, all the ones people I know, we all have a lot of problems. We all have a lot of pain usually. And I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna take it in. I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna do the surgery because I really felt like I had no choice. Like I didn't feel like I had any other options. The only other option was for him to give me more drugs. And like I joke. Well, I didn't joke, but there are the impulse control. I didn't talk about entacapone. I took entacapone as well, and the MAOI inhibitor within 2 weeks, and the Cinnamon within 2 weeks from each other. And the MAOI inhibitor gave me really bad. According to my drug handbook, you should not have taken it at the same time with a depression medication. I had bad side effects. That's what I think would cause me those panic attacks. But then entacapone caused me to have impulse control, where I was moving so fast. I was like, I could go to work. I could go back to work in 3 days. I know I can. I was painting furniture for like 5 hours straight. My husband's like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I like to refurnish furniture. And so that's what I was doing. And he kind of let me. He was like, okay, you look good. I guess you look good. And then I started to have low blood pressure. And then I was so compulsed to finish the furniture, I would lay on my back and paint on my back. This bedside table I had.
Oh my God.
And then I was even had to eat on my side because my blood pressure would drop from like 80 over 40, 70 over 40. It was really bad. So why did I say that? I don't remember, but I just think it's just really up to anyone, because we're all different. And do not be influenced by, maybe your family member or someone says, oh, you should have had it, or you should have had it by now. And two, some people say maybe, oh, am I too old for it? I mean, I've heard a doctor speaking webinar say that they've put DBS in a 90-year-old woman who was just as sharp as a tack. And she was like, she felt really well. She felt really, really well. And then, it just depends on the person, I guess, the person. And it just really depends on you too. If you want to go through that surgery and if you're fine with how you're living and you're living just fine, and that's okay too.
My surgeon, we talked about it, and he brought it up that he really thinks that people that they're moving towards sooner rather than later. I mean, not pushing it way ahead, but It's kind of the 7 or 8 year or 10 year. And then, of course, the testing that Victoria described very well, the pre-testing in terms of your mental acuity and then how the medicine works or doesn't work. Certainly makes a decision. But I do I look at people now, I mean, I don't tell them, but the 5-year chapter or the 6-year chapter, I think to myself, well, I wish you would consider it. Again, everybody has to decide themselves. But that somebody asked about the window, and I think that I was trying to describe the window. Mm-hmm. That you're just done with the medicine, like Victoria's pill box. You just want to add something. The pill box is enough already.
Yeah, no more.
Okay.
I take half the medication that I took before. I took like maybe up to 1,200 milligrams a day of carbidopa-levodopa. I'm like 600 to 700.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap up, and then anybody that wants to stay on afterwards with our speakers, you can chat and ask more questions after that. But real quickly, is DBS ever used for bradykinesia, slow movements?
I have bradykinesia. I have it. And then I was stiff as a stone. Yeah, it helped.
Yeah,
it did help.
Same with me.
Okay. Someone, let's see, Sage Bennett says someone she know had with DBS had his batteries wear down and left him in excruciating pain. Anybody know anything about that?
The pain could have been Parkinson's pain.
On your battery and make sure that it doesn't go way down.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
They're making them anymore, so the batteries last a long time though. So
right. Good. Okay, well, let's go to the next slide, and I want to thank our wonderful speakers and virtual tiaras to all 4 of you. Thank you. You were wonderful. Let's go to the next slide, Eli. Okay, so next Sunday we have an extra session scheduled because we have cycling with Dr. Jay Alberts, and this is open to everyone. This is not just for women. So if you have an exercise bike, a Peloton, he's doing studies with the Peloton now. If you have a Peloton, if you have any kind of spin bike, any kind of exercise bike, you're welcome to join us. We're going to ride for, 45 minutes or so. He's going to tell us how to get the best out of your bike ride. So plan on doing that. Let's follow through on our New Year's resolution to keep exercising. Next slide. Then following Sunday, we are going to be writing our narrative. Carol Klupney, who was mentioned before, who wrote a book called The Ribbon of Road Ahead, who wrote about her experience with DBS and walking on the Camino in Spain and the Raspberry Race in Iowa, will be talking about how you can write your story. Writing a story is very effective for coping with any disease. So I urge you to join us that day. And then 2 weeks later, we have urban polling. So if you're interested in learning how to use polls for walking and exercise, it should be a lot of fun with Mandy Shintani, who is the founder of Urban Polling. And then on February 21st, we have Dr. Sonia Mather, who I'm not quite sure what she's going to be speaking on. She's very renowned speaker, young onset. She is a doctor who was diagnosed at 27, and she will tell her story, and I'm not sure what else. And the next slide is, some of you have responded already. We have formed a partnership with the Mayro Foundation, which is a 501c3 organization. So if you wish to make a donation to Twitchy Women, you can do it through the Mayro Foundation, and there's a link to the site on my blog. And this allows us to continue to have quality programs at no cost to anyone. And that includes our mentorship program. And I think the next slide is just a thank